Welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast, hosted by Dave Roberts. Humanity possesses a unique skill, the ability to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. This podcast embraces that ability, offering learning opportunities through conversations with extraordinary guests. Dave aims to leave a positive mark on individuals around the world. So before you dive into today's episode, please share this podcast with your network, including friends, family, and colleagues. And please consider leaving a rating or review. Your support makes all the difference.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, and today it is my pleasure to have as my guest Nino Fincher. Nino is a rapid therapy expert on anxiety and a purpose clarity coach. Her clients span multiple countries and cultures. Nino speaks on mind's operating system, purpose and mind engagement, among other topics. She has a new book coming out of Stagnant State coming this fall. Nino, welcome to the Teaching Journeys podcast.
I'm pleased to be here. Thank you so much for having me, David.
Well, you're welcome. And we met through the wonders of social media. I believe it was LinkedIn.
That's true.
We connected, we had a conversation, realized we had a lot in common. I know you do a lot of work with RTT.
Yeah.
I've been a therapist in the past. We've both had our own set of challenges that we've had to deal with in our lives.
Yeah.
And we just had some great conversations through LinkedIn, and I'm just very grateful for the opportunity to be able to talk with you today.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. My first question for you is tell our listeners about the experience or experiences that have shaped your life path and your life passions today.
I'll go back a few years, and I'll say that one of the biggest experiences that sort of determined my direction has been my grandfather's passing. I was very young. I was 15 at the time, and I was raised in an atheist home. And even though our library was extensive, thanks to my mother, and she encouraged us to read, the questions of ethics and the meaning and purpose were very peripheral and sort of compartmentalized. You know, you read about it, then you put it back. Theology was one of those things that you didn't really, it was just the opium for the people, so to speak, and you just didn't discuss it. And so when my grandfather, with whom I was very close, passed away, all of those questions of meaning, of morality, of destiny, and origin became very relevant suddenly. And my family didn't have answers, and so I started reading extensively and for widely and everything I could get my hands on. And so that drove me to make conclusions based on a lot of readings in philosophy, comparative religions, some of the scientists that I read, to say that if a worldview is going to make sense, it has to correspond to reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to answer those four questions that I mentioned, the questions of meaning and ethics and origin and destiny, in a way that satisfy your understanding of how life works. And to me, having read and compared and questioned and kind of struggled through it, Christ became an answer to all of those questions in a way that had sufficient amount of evidence, not just within the text that spoke about him, but outside of that text and the sources that were not necessarily written by the people who promoted him or Christianity. And so I decided I couldn't be intellectually honest and kind of straddle the fence. I had to either reject it outright, or I had to say there's sufficient evidence for me to say I'm willing to follow Christ. And so that became one of the biggest and most transformative decisions in my life that completely informs my life now and has redirected me in the way that allows me to help people and just kind of filter everything through how I think people are designed and what the ultimate reality is.
Yeah, and I think cultivating that faith, whether it's through religion, whether it's through other philosophies, I think that grounds us. I think it gives us purpose. It gets
Mm,
us engaged. And
right.
I think it helps us develop some patience because with the human experience, it's like I always keep telling individuals we're kind of on spirit central time. We're on God's time.
For
And
sure.
God doesn't have a wristwatch, and where he is and where our ancestors are, they don't need a wristwatch. But if we have faith and we really cultivate that and we really stick to that,
Yeah.
we can kind of surrender to the greater plan, focus on the present moment, and
Right.
realize that everything is in service to us, everything is in alignment the way it needs to be.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And and it's just so myopic, I think, especially with the recent discoveries and all the scientific studies that are being made evident in with the quantum field and physics and just all kinds of interesting developments, neuroscience, that this is not the only reality. I mean, if there's something beyond this, something transcendent and something that we don't really understand fully, but you cannot really dismiss it outright.
Well, you take a look at all of the non-evidentiary based, non-ordinary phenomenon that has occurred with individuals who are not psychotic, who
Right.
don't have any history of florid mental health symptoms,
Right.
and they've experienced the magic of the universe.
Mhm.
Who are we to question whether or
Yeah.
not that's real? If it's real for them
Yep.
and it's had a transformative effect,
Right.
then it was real for them and that it was impactful for them. And we have to
Of
be able to
course.
understand it and
Yep.
witness it.
Yeah, or at least, not dismiss it and be cynical about it. I mean, and some of the people who spoke and have written about it have been people who have had everything to lose when it comes to, reputation, because they were
Mm.
scientists and physicians and, people who otherwise would have been mocked, by the community where they write or where they work. So,
Yeah. Well, the other thing, individuals who have discovered metaphysical phenomenon, I can rattle off a few names. These were individuals who were scientists.
yes.
You take a look at Eben Alexander with his
Yep.
experience with near-death experiences, Raymond
Hmm.
Moody,
Yep.
who did the research on near-death and shared death experiences, Brian
Hmm.
Weiss with past life regression therapy. These
Yeah.
were MDs, science-based individuals who, through pure serendipity, through work with other clients, discovered that there is something beyond the physical world
Sure.
that is real, but we can't scientifically verify that, but we know it to be real
Right.
because of the experiences that individuals have reported and
Right.
that have been consistently documented.
Agreed. Yes.
So,
Mm.
boy, we could have a whole nother podcast
Yeah.
discussion just on this
Yeah.
topic.
Part two.
Part two,
That's right.
maybe part three, but
Yeah, that's right.
I want to shift focus for a minute to your work. I know you do a lot of work with Rapid Transformational Therapy or RTT. Tell our audience what it is and what do you believe sets it apart from other treatment modalities, let's say such as cognitive behavioral therapy
Mm.
or solution focused therapy.
Rapid transformational therapy was developed by Marissa Peer. She's a British therapist. I've had the honor and the pleasure of working with her and learning directly from her. And what she did is combine three different modalities that in themselves have been very effective. So she to cognitive behavioral therapy, hypnotherapy, and neurolinguistics. And what that combination has allowed us to do is to bypass a lot of, again, what I call clutter and a lot of irrelevant details or information in order to get to the substance or to the root of the issue that the client is frustrated by or wants to transform, and do it very quickly by leveraging the brain's ability to transform itself. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a fantastic method. All of the therapies work, and I practice cognitive behavioral therapy under supervision of phenomenal mentors and therapists after I graduated,
Mhm.
when I studied counseling. It's effective, it works. If you have a therapist who knows what they're doing, you'll get to where you need to go. The process is a lot longer than is in rapid therapy. And it's not to say that there aren't some people who need just that, but those aren't the clients that I'm working with.
Who are the clients, who are the individuals who are most likely either going to request services for RTT or are really good candidates for RTT, as opposed to the cognitive behavioral therapy?
The people I work with are top performers who just don't have time,
Yes.
and have to make decisions quickly and want to bypass a lot of unnecessary things and just see the transformation and efficiency and kind of with speed. I mean, that's kind of the distinctive that I pride myself in, get them to solutions a lot faster. So people who work at that level, CEOs, a lot of CEOs, a lot of athletes, for instance, who are high level athletes who some of them struggle to get back into the game after an injury, for instance. Even though an injury may have healed, there's still a struggle here. So people like that, and just anybody who's really sort of very ready to get to the outcome faster than traditional therapy would provide.
Well, in traditional therapy, you're right. With CBT, it tends, whenever you're working on just helping individuals modify belief systems, it takes longer just because our beliefs have been so ingrained and
Right.
reinforced throughout our lives. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I can see it. In RTT, I think, especially if you're working with insurance companies, you're looking for reimbursement, they like rapid therapies
Mm-hmm.
because it shows efficient treatment outcomes. And quite frankly, it saves their employers money too.
It does. It does. And, and it's priceless to be able to get back to what you're doing and into your relationships in a manner that allows you to reset and reprogram a lot faster. So yeah, I love it. Again, CBT is fantastic, but I'm very content seeing the outcomes that thankfully I've had with my clients just working with this.
And, I tell my students too, I mean, I can expose you to a variety of theoretical perspectives, either family
Yeah.
theoretical perspectives or individual counseling perspectives.
Hmm.
But bottom line, it's going to be like you're going to mix and match. You're going to pick aspects of this
Right.
one
Right. It's a
modality.
tool
Yeah.
belt, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So you basically, based on the client's needs, based on the family's needs, you're going to do those interventions
Right.
that reflect their individual differences and unique characteristics.
Absolutely. And that suit them best,
Mm.
And I had a young lady who is graduating this year with a degree in psychology contact me once, and she was kind of frustrated. She didn't know what to pursue or what specialty. And that's kind of what I talked to her about. I mean, to decide who it is that you want to work with and then kind of work your way backwards and what you need to do in order to achieve that
Abs-
outcome. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Are there any self-imposed or external barriers that prevent individuals from totally embracing RTT, or is this just something that is kind of relatable for everybody?
I think it could work for most everybody. People are a bit hesitant when they hear hypnosis, and it's understandable because a lot of people have a misunderstanding or maybe um, entertainment type of understanding of what hypnotherapy means. But just being able to explain how it's just a natural state of your brain that allows for concentration, the focus on things that are essential and
Mhm.
allowing you to relax sufficiently to do the work that's required usually makes a difference. And I work with a lot of veterans and first responders as well. And these are people who are very tough and security is important and they're not very immediately trusting necessarily. So if it works for them, yeah, it could work for others as well.
And I think based on what they've seen on a day-to-day basis, they become desensitized, they become hardened, and they
Mm.
become very guarded. And I think hypnosis is a
Yes.
great tool just to kind of get them into a relaxed state
Yeah.
and just let what they've repressed just flow naturally.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And not only that, but a lot of these people, like first responders, for instance, that have this weight of feeling like I have to carry everybody else's burdens,
Mm.
and if they, God forbid, collapse, then everything else collapses with them. And so it just kind of becomes this vicious cycle that eventually explodes in the most unfortunate way and most unfortunate time. And
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
especially when they become too fatigued or just too emotionally or physically compromised to keep up that energy level or keep up the facade of, hey, I'm doing, everything is okay, when in reality they're not okay.
No.
On your website, I saw a reference to a 4-step MOVE, MOVE, the acronym,
Yes.
that delivers sustainable movement in record time. Tell us a little bit about MOVE and tell us how that aligns with, or if it aligns with RTT.
There are 3 different ways that I help my clients. RTT is one. Another way that I help my clients is through getting them to the exact purpose clarity. And that's a coaching system. And then there are some people who do want a longer engagement and to attend to both of those things, plus get a lot more than engage with me. Those engage with me a little bit longer. And for those clients, that system has been really quite transformative. And so what that stands for is the 4 steps that are essential to lock in order to create movement in a stagnant state. AM stands for movement, and it's just the tiniest small movement that you can consistently commit to just for one day, and then again for the day tomorrow, and then again for for the next day. And it's doable, it's repeatable and sustainable just by virtue of being small enough. O stands for, and this is where rapid therapy comes in. It's the understanding of what a person has overcome and the capacity and the ability and the resilience that they've been gifted to bypass things that they think may be holding them back still. And so we talk about that. V is the value and sort of the assigning of what matters to them, what's important to them when it comes to what is it that you want to get to, because like Bible says, wherever your treasure is, your heart will be also. So for your heart to engage, you need to go after what matters to you, right? And then E stands for expectation. We all expect something. We all either expect to fail or we expect to succeed, and understanding how you need to leverage the capacity of the mind to direct you properly to the expectation that will allow you to succeed rather than fail is sort of gives you that big picture and wraps it all up nicely in a bow.
I like that, especially the movement part. I'm a firm believer that movement does bring clarity, it does
Yeah.
bring peace. I know a lot of individuals who have gone through their own challenges. They've talked about movement. They've talked about just being able to move, being out in nature. That has a calming effect. So I really
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
And I like the values piece because it forces us really to just, okay, based on where we are now, how our priorities change, are our values going to be different? How are our values going to align with the world that we want to be a part of
Right.
and want to create?
Yeah. And whether or not you value the thing itself that you're
Yeah.
going after, there's a bigger picture and a smaller picture that all have to kind of click together in order for the puzzle to work.
Yeah, I like that. And the
Mm.
expectations piece, it's like when you talk about the expectations of failure or success, a lot of times I think when individuals either self-sabotage or don't reach their goals, they buy into this automatic narrative that's been kind of conditioned through either, growing up or through other external
Yes.
sources that whatever I do, it's not going to bear fruit. So they
Yeah.
have this automatic narrative that they
Mhm.
subconsciously subscribe to that they're going to fail. So I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds like once they begin to realign their values, they can now also realign their expectations.
For sure. Yeah, and then this becomes sort of the checklist that you kind of go through. I did a TEDx talk on just that specifically. So anybody wants to hear more about it, it's available. It was done at the Austin College, and so if they just Google my name, it'll come up there. And even you mentioned values. A lot of what we do when it comes to that part is also aligning the purpose, because
Mhm.
people have a misunderstanding of what purpose is, and therein lays the frustration of not being able to really get clear about what is it that's important to them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I love it. I mean, it's so incredibly fulfilling being able to get people moved through
Well,
that.
there's also nothing complicated about it. It's just very, very direct.
Yeah.
It's a very linear progression in terms of improving our lot in the world and also improving how we see our value in the world. So
Yeah.
it's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You have a new book coming out in the fall. Do you want to just talk about what that book is going to be about? When do you anticipate it being published and kind of what
Yeah.
inspired it?
Yeah. The date was set for September. So now there's all kinds of people that are keeping me to that date, which is great. It keeps my, behind in gear, so to speak, and helps me write. It's a book for people who need to get out of a rut. And I say rut is, I work with a lot of people who struggle with anxiety and the symptoms of trauma. People who struggle with insomnia. I've worked with couples who have had issues in marriage. Any of it really ends up being a stagnant state.
Yes.
The book is everything that I help my clients with, and pretty much everything that we discuss in our coaching program is going to be in that book, hopefully. And the idea is I want it to be a reference for people that they can quickly and easily access and just kind of check, find the gaps and fill the gaps. And ideally, at first, it was just an idea that I was going to write it for my kids to have, so that when they feel stuck in life, just go back and repeat the steps. And right now I say that's going to be the second and the last book I'm going to write, but who knows? The aim is September. So anybody who is interested and wants to pre-purchase it or talk to me about it, they can contact me from my website.
On the other thing, that might be when the book comes out, that might be a really good time to do a part 2 for the podcast.
Sure.
Talk more about the book, and also maybe delve into some of the other faith-based stuff. Why it's important maybe to simply just believe in all the magic that the universe has to offer without having to have a scientific explanation for it. So,
right.
Now, you've also written a children's book. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Kooba says hi. I saw the cover. I smiled. So I've got to ask you what inspired you to write that book? And what do you want children and families to take away from it?
So it was written for small children. And really, the book was written because we lived in the Middle East for about 14 and a half years. And that dog, Kooba, came from there. We got him there while we lived there. And he became such a favorite for everybody that I knew that after we left and I continued to return back to visit, all of the kids in all of the homes that I would visit would always ask me how Kooba is before they asked me about myself. And they missed him, and I've had kids cry when I showed them pictures because they wanted to hug him so much. So I just thought, why not write a book and put some of his illustrations there so that kids can have something, sweet to hold on to. So that's why it was written. And the book is really about how to make decisions every day that allow you to be happy and healthy. So all the questions about how to not be sad for a long time and why being sad is okay. So mental engagement and emotional engagement and physical wellness is what the book is about. And it's written from Kooba's perspective. And it's written with an idea that parents could read it to their kids who can't yet read, or the small children who can't read, and has a few questions with, I think, every page where parents could just kind of interact with kids and get them talking about and thinking about why these things are important.
Yeah, I think it's great to start them young. And I think it's a great way for parents and kids to have conversations.
Yeah.
And, even particularly as they get older, that I think sets the stage to have conversations about taboo topics.
Yeah.
And I think just setting that conversational tone and having that parent create a safe place for their child to just talk about anything, I think makes a great deal of difference as they get older and as they struggle with more profound issues.
And it establishes a relationship between a parent and the kid that allows for that freedom and comfort of just kind of expressing, I hate my brother. I don't like this food. Well, let's talk about food. So it kind of covers everything. And it talks all about all the things that Kooba likes or dislikes, whether it's food or play or movement or, curiosity, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I can see where you could develop a whole bunch of questions, additional questions around all of those other topics. And it's It sounds like just a fun way to get kids engaged and get
Yeah.
parents engaged.
I hope so. Yeah. That was the idea anyway.
So when was Kooba Says Hi published? That was fairly recent.
I want to say 2023.
That rings a bell to me because when I saw the book on Amazon, I think 2023
think so.
does ring
Yeah.
a bell. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you've obviously had a lot of diverse experiences in your life with I know the other thing is that I know you've worked among different cultures. And can I ask you, has that informed the work that you do? Have you taken what you've learned from being in different cultures? I know you're in the Middle East, lived in the Middle East for 14 years.
Yeah.
How has your work with different cultures, how has that informed your coaching practice, your coaching philosophy, and your
Mhm.
coaching program?
I think it's been very helpful to understand and learn what different cultures value, how the family dynamic works in different cultures, what they're comfortable and uncomfortable to talk about,
Mhm.
what issues tend to develop because of what experiences are like in various cultures. And so I'm very grateful that, for example, while we were in the Middle East, that we immediately were able to make a lot of friends and acquaintances with the local people. Oftentimes in UAE, people will move there and live and only really interact with expat community. I'm very thankful that I immediately made a lot of friends. I mean, we lived in the neighborhood that had mainly Emirati people. Most of my friends are kind of Emirati ladies. And of course, I
Mm.
meet them and then I'd meet their mother and then the whole rest of the family. And it's just been a fun way to learn what's on their hearts, what bothers them. And so that makes a difference.
I think it does because I imagine in your coaching practice, you work with individuals from all walks of life. So having walked in different cultures gives you a very unique perspective
Mhm.
and really not only to do culturally sensitive treatment, but truly individualized
Yeah.
treatment. And maybe in some cultures, some treatment interventions may not be understood or welcomed. In other cultures, they are. So I would imagine if that were me and I had that experience, that would allow me to be really more uniquely individualized than if I didn't have that experience.
I think so, yeah. I just feel very privileged to have had the exposure and the opportunity and the trust really of the people who were willing to, work with me. Very grateful.
Yeah, well, and I think if you go in with the attitude that I'm here to learn, I'm not here to impose, and you create that safe, welcoming aura
Yeah,
that's going to transcend cultural difference.
100%. Yeah. And it's service. I mean, I want to serve my clients. I so much want them to be well and I so deeply want them to succeed that it's just, like I said, I'm so grateful. I'm so very grateful for what I get to do every day.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a job or not work when you like what you're doing. You
Yeah,
know,
for sure. For
yeah,
sure.
it doesn't fit. It never feels that way. So,
Mm-mm.
anything else about your coaching program that you want to leave our listeners with? Anything that we haven't talked about?
Um, well, the Bible says, take your thoughts captive to obedience to Christ. Now, everybody doesn't trust Christ, which is, I don't only work with Christians, but the truth still remains that
Yeah.
thoughts have a tremendous influence on how our behavior plays out. And
Mm.
so, what I encourage people to do is to capture the thoughts. Like, imagine that you are a bouncer or a
Yeah.
bodyguard, you know, just stand in front of whatever it is that continues to recur that's defeating or terrifying or the thought that really debilitates your being or practice or
Yeah.
life, and then capture it and really pay attention to it. Figure out what it's being influenced by or who it's being
Mm.
influenced by. How do you allow it to then influence your decision making and your behavior, and then in turn, really personality? Because if we
Mm.
continue to repeat something, that just becomes who we are.
Yeah.
So capturing a thought and really, really allowing yourself to think through it. And it's one of the hardest things to do, I think, until it becomes a habit.
Mm.
And then once it becomes a habit and you consistently allow yourself to repeat that, then it just becomes second nature. And so I would say that would be one of the most important things.
Yeah, and I think, we just use one of the basics of cognitive behavioral therapy is take a look at the thoughts that have kept you
Hmm.
from achieving your goals.
Right.
How does the beliefs translate into behavior? And
Hmm.
what do we do? And that individual has to be motivated to put that out
Yeah.
on the table,
Yep.
become kind of uncomfortable with being made aware of something that they were maybe not previously aware of, that they did,
Hmm.
like you said, habitually, normalize that anxiety for them and then work on having them do some cognitive restructuring or,
Right.
of that belief so that they can, have a more positive impact for themselves and on
Hmm.
others and just live a more happier, productive life.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
Exactly.
Nino, you've left us with a lot of great things today, a lot of great takeaways, a lot about yourself, a lot about your work. But if you're going to leave us with one ultimate takeaway today, what would that be?
My life was transformed by Christ. If there's only one thing that I can say, and I have 5 seconds to say the last thing I can say to somebody, would be Christ is exceptional and unlike anyone else. And so if what he said about himself, if his claims are true, then they are transformative. And
Mhm.
he saying that he's the way and the truth and the life can affect your life and eternity in the way that is beyond your imagination. And so if you haven't considered his claims and his authority and what he did and said with his death and resurrection and the forgiveness that is gifted to us because of what he did, I
Mhm.
really hope that you will consider it and don't dismiss it.
Thank you. And it's important that we have faith in something greater than ourselves. That allows
Right.
us to transcend whatever challenges we've
Right.
had in our lives. And
Yeah.
we can't do that without having faith, and we can't do that without community. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. You love God and you love people, or, we're not the only thing. I mean, we're designed to live in a community and we're designed to strive for something greater.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's man's search for meaning to kind
Hmm.
of, steal from Viktor Frankl. So,
That's right. That's right.
so if individuals want to contact you for your services, Nino, find out about, purchase your book. What's the best way for them to do that?
The easiest way would be to get in touch with me through my website, which is ninofit, NINOFIT.com. It stands for Functional Integrated Therapy. Or find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I always respond to messages on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, I can attest to that because when I
Yeah.
message you on LinkedIn, it's like almost an immediate response. So
Yeah. I pride myself in that. I really try to not delay my responses to people.
that's another reason that I align so nicely with you because I have that same
Mm.
philosophy. I have a 24-hour window
Yeah.
to respond to emails.
I think it's respectful. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's busy. People delay very long, and I just say, it's unacceptable. To me, it's unacceptable.
Yeah.
And it doesn't responses don't take a very long time. So I think it shows that you're honoring people's time and value.
I think when we can show consistent responsiveness to somebody's needs, particularly when those needs may not have been met in a timely fashion or may not have been validated, I think that helps us build trust and helps us build an ongoing relationship with that client.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
Nino, thank you so much for just a wonderful conversation today. I enjoyed it. And I think when your book comes out in September, we got to talk about it part two.
I would love that. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. And with that, that's a wrap on another episode of the Teaching Journeys podcast. I'm your host, Dave Roberts, wishing you peace.